No. Please, that's not mine. Elara's voice cracked as two royal guards seized her arms and dragged her through the crowded festival square. The golden ceremonial pendant lay at her feet. The same pendant that had disappeared from the royal display less than 10 minutes ago. Thousands of eyes followed her. Thousands of voices condemned her. Of course it was her. The thief's daughter strikes again. Just like her father. Throw her in prison. The insults came from every direction. Elara struggled against the guards. I didn't steal it. Nobody listened. Nobody ever did. An old woman in the crowd stepped forward. Leave the girl alone. She's innocent. A man shoved her back. Innocent? Her father robbed the crown itself. More laughter erupted. The words hit Elara harder than any slap. Not because they were new, because she had heard them her entire life. The guards pulled her toward the palace platform where the royal family sat. King Rowan watched with disappointment. The nobles whispered among themselves. And standing beside the throne was Prince Adrian, the future king, the only man in the kingdom whose expression wasn't filled with hatred. Elara lowered her head. She knew what was coming. Public humiliation. Prison. Perhaps worse. The crowd wanted blood. One guard held up the pendant. We found it hidden among her belongings. The crowd roared. Guilty. 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 Elara felt tears burn her eyes. Not again. Please not again. The memories flooded back. The trial. The accusations. The screams. Her father's face. 15 years had passed, yet nothing had changed. She was still paying for a crime she never committed. Then Prince Adrian suddenly stepped forward. Stop! The entire square fell silent. The prince's voice carried authority. The guards immediately froze. Adrian stared at Elara, then at the pendant, then back at the crowd. I said stop. The silence deepened. The prince slowly descended from the royal platform. One step, then another, until he stood directly before Elara. The crowd watched in confusion. What are you doing? One noble asked. Adrian ignored him. His eyes remained fixed on Elara. Then something happened that nobody expected. The prince dropped to one knee. A collective gasp swept through the kingdom. Even the king rose from his seat. The guards loosened their grip. The crowd stared in disbelief. The future king of Eldoria was kneeling before the most hated girl in the kingdom. Before the daughter of a man they had called a thief for 15 years. Tears filled Elara's eyes. She couldn't understand what was happening. Neither could anyone else. The prince lowered his head. Forgive us. The words echoed across the silent square. And in that moment, the entire kingdom realized they had been wrong. But to understand why a prince would kneel before a girl they despised, one must go back 15 years. Back to the day everything began. Back to the day a lie destroyed 2 lives. Back when Elara was only 7 years old. Back when her father was still a hero. At the time, Thomas Vale was one of the most trusted men in Eldoria. He worked inside the royal treasury. Every noble respected him. Every merchant admired him. Every guard trusted him. Most importantly, his daughter adored him. Papa! 7-year-old Elara ran through the front door and jumped into his arms. Thomas laughed and spun her around. There she is. You promised we'd visit the river today. And when have I ever broken a promise? Elara smiled. Never. Exactly. Her mother laughed from the kitchen. You're spoiling her. Thomas grinned. That's my duty as a father. Life wasn't perfect. They weren't rich, but they were happy. And sometimes happiness is worth more than gold. That evening, Thomas took Elara to the river outside town. The sunset painted the water orange. Father and daughter sat on a fallen tree overlooking the current. Elara skipped stones across the surface. Thomas watched her quietly. Elara. Yes. Can I tell you something important? She nodded. One day people may judge you. Why? Because that's what people do. The little girl frowned. Then they're mean. Thomas laughed. Sometimes. Will they judge me? Maybe. Why? Because you're different. She looked confused. I'm not different. Thomas placed a hand on her shoulder. Kindness is different. The words didn't make sense to her then. But years later, she would remember every single one. Always remember this. What? The truth doesn't stop being true just because people stop believing it. She nodded, though she barely understood. Neither of them knew those would become some of the most important words of her life. 3 days later everything changed. The kingdom woke to shocking news. The crown of Eldoria had been robbed. The royal jewels were missing. Panic spread through the capital. Guards searched houses. Merchants closed shops. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. Then came the second shock. A suspect had been arrested. Thomas Vale. The news struck the town like lightning. No, Elara's mother whispered. No. She shook her head repeatedly. No. Pounding came at the door. 3 royal guards entered. Thomas stood between them. His wrists were bound. Elara stared. Papa. Thomas forced a smile. Hello, princess. She ran toward him. A guard blocked her path. Thomas immediately stepped forward. Don't touch my daughter. The guard moved aside. Elara hugged him tightly. What's happening? Thomas didn't answer immediately. His eyes met his wife's. Fear, pain, confusion. All of it passed silently between them. Then he knelt before Elara. I need you to be brave. Are you leaving? For a little while. Why? The question shattered him. Because he didn't know how to explain betrayal to a child. I have to help clear up a misunderstanding. Then come back quickly. He smiled sadly. I'll try. One guard stepped forward. We must go. Thomas nodded. Then he leaned closer to Elara. Remember what I told you by the river. She blinked. The truth. He smiled. The truth. Those were the last words she heard before the guards took him away. The trial happened 3 days later. The entire kingdom attended. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. Documents were shown. Everything pointed toward Thomas. The stolen jewels had supposedly been found inside a storage room connected to his office. People who once praised him now condemned him. The verdict was swift. Guilty. Elara watched from the crowd. Her mother sobbed uncontrollably. Thomas stood silently. The judge raised his voice. Thomas Vale is hereby stripped of all honors and titles. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Others looked away. Thomas searched the audience. Finally his eyes found Elara. For a brief moment the noise disappeared. Only father and daughter remained. I didn't do it. His lips barely moved. But she understood. Then he was taken away. And with him went everything they had. Their reputation. Their friends. Their future. Overnight they became outcasts. Neighbors stopped visiting. Shopkeepers stopped smiling. Children stopped playing with Elara. The world became colder, crueler, lonelier. One afternoon she approached a group of girls near the village well. Can I play too? The girls exchanged glances. One of them stepped forward. My mother says I'm not allowed. Why? The answer came quickly. Because your father is a thief. The other girls laughed. Elara stood frozen. I didn't steal anything. But he did. No, he didn't. The girls turned away, leaving her alone. She walked home in silence and cried herself to sleep. Years passed. The insults never stopped. The whispers never faded. The pain never truly left. Yet somehow, Elara refused to become bitter. If someone dropped groceries, she helped. If someone was hungry, she shared food. If someone was sick, she offered assistance. Many people couldn't understand it. Why help those who treated her so badly? Why remain kind? The answer was simple. Because kindness was the only thing they hadn't managed to take from her. And far away inside the royal palace, someone was beginning to notice. Someone who would change everything. Someone named Adrian, the Prince of Eldoria. Years passed, and while Elara grew into a woman, the kingdom's opinion of her never seemed to change. To most people, she was not Elara. She was not kind. She was not hard-working. She was not brave. She was simply the thief's daughter. The label followed her everywhere. When she walked through the market, conversations stopped. When she entered a shop, eyes followed her. When something went missing, people looked in her direction first. The accusations were never spoken openly anymore. They didn't have to be. The looks said enough. Yet somehow Elara endured. Every morning before sunrise, she would leave her small cottage and help old Mrs. Hallow gather firewood. Every afternoon she assisted injured farmers returning from the fields. Every evening she delivered meals to elderly villagers who could no longer care for themselves. Many accepted her help. Few thanked her. Most pretended not to notice. But Elara continued anyway. One rainy afternoon, she was carrying medicine through the village when she heard shouting. A horse galloped wildly through the muddy street. An elderly man stumbled directly into its path. People screamed. Some jumped aside. Others froze. The horse charged forward. Without hesitation, Elara dropped everything and ran. "Move!" The old man looked up too late. Elara threw herself at him. Both tumbled into the mud moments before the horse thundered past. The crowd gasped. The old man stared at her. "You saved me." Elara smiled. "You're all right. That's what matters." She helped him to his feet. The villagers watched silently. For a brief moment, guilt crossed a few faces. Then someone muttered, "Even thieves can do good things." The spell broke. The crowd dispersed. Elara simply picked up the medicine and continued walking. She was used to it by now. What she didn't know was that someone had witnessed everything. A young man standing beneath a cloak near the blacksmith shop. Someone whose face remained hidden. Someone who wasn't supposed to be there. Prince Adrian. The future king often left the palace disguised as a commoner. His father hated the habit. "You are a prince," King Rowan would often say. "You should be protected." Adrian always answered the same way. "How can I lead people I don't understand?" So he wandered among them. He listened, observed, learned. And over the years, one person kept appearing in the stories he heard. The thief's daughter. Yet nothing he witnessed matched the rumors. Everywhere he went, people described her father as a criminal. Yet everywhere he looked, Elara displayed integrity. The contradiction bothered him deeply. As he watched her disappear down the road, he turned to a nearby merchant. "Who is she?" The merchant laughed. "You must be new." "I am." "That's Elara." "The thief's daughter?" "The very same." Adrian frowned. "She saved that man's life." The merchant shrugged. "Doesn't change who her father was." "Perhaps not." But Adrian wasn't convinced. That evening, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Something felt wrong. Something didn't fit. And once a question entered Adrian's mind, it rarely left. The next morning, he visited the royal archives. Rows of ancient documents filled the massive chamber. Dust-covered shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling. The elderly archivist looked surprised. "Your Highness, I'm looking for a case." "What kind?" "A treasury theft from 15 years ago." The archivist's eyes widened slightly. "Thomas Vale." Adrian nodded. "You know it." "Everyone knows it." "Bring me everything." The old man hesitated, then obeyed. Hours passed. Adrian studied every document, every statement, every testimony, every report. At first, everything appeared straightforward. Evidence, witnesses, findings. Yet the deeper he looked, the more questions emerged. A witness claimed to have seen Thomas near the treasury at midnight. Another document placed him somewhere else entirely. One report listed 3 guards on duty. Another listed 4. A financial record contained alterations. Dates didn't match. Signatures seemed inconsistent. Small details, tiny cracks, but enough to make Adrian uncomfortable. "Interesting." The archivist looked up. "What is this case? You think he was innocent?" "I think something is missing." The old man remained silent. Then he slowly closed the archive ledger. "There were rumors." Adrian looked up immediately. "What rumors?" The archivist lowered his voice. "That Thomas was investigating corruption before his arrest." The prince sat upright. "What kind of corruption?" "No one knew." "Why wasn't this investigated?" The archivist laughed bitterly. "Because after his conviction, nobody cared." The words lingered. Nobody cared. Adrian returned to the palace with more questions than answers. Meanwhile, Elara's life continued as usual. Struggle, work, survival. One evening she sat outside her cottage watching the sunset. An elderly woman approached. Mrs. Hallow, the same woman she helped every week. "You should rest more." Elara smiled. "You say that every day." "Because it's true." The old woman sat beside her. For several moments they watched the sky together. Then Mrs. Hallow spoke quietly. "Your father would be proud." The words caught Elara off guard. Very few people ever mentioned him kindly. Tears immediately formed. "You think so?" "I know so." Elara looked away. "I wish I remembered him better." "You remember enough." "I remember his voice." Mrs. Hallow smiled. "What else?" "He always believed people could be good." The old woman laughed softly. "Then you definitely remember enough." Elara smiled for the first time that day. Far away in the palace, another memory was being uncovered. Adrian had spent weeks investigating. The more he learned, the less he trusted the official story. Then finally, he found someone worth speaking to. A retired royal guard named Marcus. Marcus had served during the original investigation. The prince found him living alone outside the capital. The old man seemed shocked by the visit. "Your Highness, I have questions." Marcus sighed immediately. "I suspected that." They sat across from each other. Adrian wasted no time. "Did Thomas Vale steal the jewels?" The old guard stared into the distance. For a long moment he said nothing. Then finally, "I don't know." "What do you mean?" "I never believed the evidence." Adrian leaned forward. "Why?" Marcus lowered his voice. "Because Thomas wasn't that kind of man." "That's not proof." "No." The old guard nodded. "It's not." "Then what is?" Marcus hesitated. Then he stood, walking slowly toward an old chest in the corner. He opened it, removed a faded notebook, and handed it to Adrian. "I kept records." The prince opened it. Inside were personal notes from 15 years ago, observations, timelines, witness statements, details never included in the official reports. Adrian's pulse quickened. One entry stood out immediately. A nobleman's name, Lord Victor Ashford, one of the most powerful men in the kingdom. "What is this?" Marcus sighed. "The man who benefited most from Thomas's downfall." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "You suspected him?" "I suspected everyone." "Why wasn't he investigated?" Marcus laughed bitterly. "Because powerful men rarely investigate other powerful men." The words hit hard. Very hard. The prince continued reading. And for the first time, a frightening possibility emerged. What if Thomas hadn't been framed by chance? What if someone had planned everything? What if the real thief had never been caught? The thought sent chills through him. Because if it were true, then an innocent man had suffered for 15 years. And an innocent daughter had suffered alongside him. Back in the village, Elara remained unaware. For the first time in years, she felt strangely hopeful. Not because her life had improved, because she sensed something changing. She couldn't explain it, couldn't understand it, but she felt it, as if fate itself had begun moving, as if a truth buried for years was finally struggling to reach the surface. She had no idea how right she was, and she certainly had no idea that danger was already closing in around her. Because Lord Victor Ashford had also noticed something. He had noticed the prince asking questions. He had noticed old records being examined. He had noticed retired guards being visited. And powerful men become very nervous when old secrets start breathing again. One evening, Lord Victor stood inside his mansion staring into the fire. A nervous servant approached. "My lord." Victor didn't look away. "Speak." "The prince continues investigating." Silence. The servant swallowed. "What should we do?" Victor's eyes hardened. Then a cold smile appeared. "The same thing we did 15 years ago." The servant immediately understood. Fear crossed his face. "My lord." Victor turned toward him. "Some truths are too dangerous to survive." The servant lowered his head. And in that moment, a second trap began to take shape. A trap designed to destroy Elara once and for all. A trap that would soon place her at the center of the kingdom's greatest scandal. A trap that would lead directly to the moment when the prince would kneel before her. But before the truth could emerge, everything would have to fall apart first. A week later, the kingdom of Eldoria prepared for its grandest celebration in decades. The Festival of Unity. People traveled from distant villages. Merchants filled the streets. Musicians arrived from neighboring lands. Colorful banners hung from every building. For 3 days, the capital transformed into a sea of laughter, music, and celebration. Everyone was expected to attend. Even Elara. At first, she refused. "I don't belong there." Mrs. Hallow sighed. "You belong there as much as anyone." "You know that's not true." The old woman crossed her arms. "I'm old. And I've learned something." Elara smiled. "What?" "Never miss a free meal." For the first time in days, Elara laughed. The old woman pointed a finger at her. "Go." "I don't know." "Go." "People will stare. They always stare. They'll whisper. They always whisper." Elara couldn't argue with that. By the following morning, she found herself standing among thousands of people in the capital. Music echoed through the streets. Children ran between stalls. Performers entertained crowds. For a few hours it almost felt normal. For a few hours, she forgot who she was. Or rather, who everyone believed she was. High above the crowd, Prince Adrian stood on the palace balcony. His eyes scanned the festival. Then he saw her, Elara, walking quietly through the crowd, helping a small child retrieve a dropped toy, smiling despite the suspicious glances around her. The prince found himself smiling too. Then his expression darkened, because he also saw someone else, Lord Victor Ashford, watching, waiting, observing. Something about the nobleman's behavior felt wrong, very wrong. Adrian's instincts immediately sharpened. The investigation had already uncovered troubling inconsistencies. Enough to make him suspicious, not enough to prove anything. Yet, he turned toward Captain Roland. "Keep an eye on Lord Victor today." The captain frowned. "You expect trouble?" "I expect something." "What?" Adrian looked toward the crowd. "I don't know." That uncertainty bothered him. A lot. Hours passed. The festival grew louder. The royal family eventually unveiled the centerpiece of the celebration. A priceless golden pendant. An ancient symbol of the kingdom. One of Eldoria's most treasured artifacts. Guards surrounded the display. Citizens gathered to admire it. Everything seemed peaceful. Then chaos erupted. A scream cut through the square. "The pendant!" People turned. The display case stood open. Empty. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then panic exploded. "It's gone. Someone stole it. Lock the gates." Guards rushed into action. The festival instantly transformed into a crime scene. People were ordered to remain where they stood. Searches began. Questions spread through the crowd like wildfire. Who had taken it? How? Why? And then came the answer everyone seemed eager to believe. A guard suddenly shouted, "I found something." The crowd surged forward. The golden pendant glimmered in his hand. Gasps echoed everywhere. Then came the second revelation. It was hidden among her belongings. Silence. Every eye turned toward Elara. Her blood ran cold. "No." A guard stepped forward. "You are under arrest." "No." The pendant was displayed before everyone. "No." The crowd erupted. "The thief's daughter. Just like her father." "I knew it." Elara shook her head desperately. "I didn't take it." Nobody listened. Nobody wanted to. The accusation fit too perfectly. The story was too convenient. The daughter of a thief becoming a thief herself. People love stories that confirm their prejudices. The guards grabbed her arms. Tears filled her eyes. Not because she feared prison. Because she knew exactly what this meant. 15 years. 15 years of trying. 15 years of surviving. 15 years of proving she wasn't her father's crime. Gone. Destroyed in a single moment. The crowd followed as she was dragged toward the royal platform. Insults rained from every direction. Hatred, mockery, judgment. The same poison she had swallowed her entire life. And somewhere within the crowd, Lord Victor smiled. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Just like 15 years ago. Frame the innocent. Control the narrative. Let the crowd do the rest. Simple, effective, permanent, or so he thought. Because this time, Prince Adrian was watching. And unlike 15 years ago, someone cared enough to question the story. The prince stepped forward. The crowd slowly quieted. His gaze moved from Elara to the pendant, then to Lord Victor, and finally back to Elara. Something wasn't right. Again, the same feeling, the same certainty, the same pattern. Too perfect. Far too perfect. He turned toward the guards. "When exactly was the pendant discovered?" One guard answered, "Moments after the theft." "And who found it?" Another guard stepped forward. "I did." Adrian nodded slowly. Then he asked a question nobody expected. "Who searched her belongings before you?" Confusion spread. The guard hesitated. "No one." "You're certain?" "Yes." The prince stared. The hesitation lasted barely a second. But he noticed it. Adrian always noticed. The prince's eyes hardened. "Search everyone involved." The square erupted with confusion. "What?" The guard looked nervous. "Your Highness." "Everyone." The command echoed across the platform. Including guards. Including servants. Including nobles. Nobody was exempt. Lord Victor's expression changed instantly. Only slightly, but enough. Adrian saw it. The prince's pulse quickened. Something was finally breaking. Hours later, the investigation uncovered something extraordinary. A young palace servant confessed. At first he denied everything. Then he cried. Then he collapsed. And finally, he told the truth. "I didn't steal it." The prince stared. "Then why did you plant it?" The servant sobbed. "Because I was paid." The square fell silent. Every noble froze. Every guard stared. Paid. One word. One devastating word. The prince leaned forward. "By whom?" The servant's entire body trembled. Fear consumed him. "Tell me." The servant closed his eyes. Then spoke. "Lord Victor Ashford." The crowd exploded. Gasps. Shouts. Disbelief. Chaos. The nobleman's face turned pale. Immediately, guards surrounded him. "This is ridiculous," Victor shouted. "A lie." But Adrian wasn't finished. "Bring the records." Within hours, investigators searched Victor's estate. What they found changed everything. Hidden ledgers, bribery payments, forged documents, stolen treasury records. And then, the final piece. The evidence connected directly to Thomas Vale. The original case. The original theft. The original lie. For 15 years, the truth had been buried. Now it stood exposed before the kingdom. Thomas had discovered Victor's corruption. Victor had framed him before he could reveal it. The stolen jewels had never been Thomas's crime. They had been Victor's. The crowd struggled to comprehend it. Everything they believed. Everything they repeated. Everything they taught their children. Wrong. All of it. The next morning, a public trial was held. No one stayed home. The entire kingdom attended. Victor sat in chains. The evidence piled higher with every hour. Witnesses testified. Records were presented. Confessions were read aloud. The truth became impossible to deny. By sunset, the verdict arrived. Guilty, not just of theft, of conspiracy, fraud, corruption, and the destruction of an innocent man. For the first time in 15 years, justice finally appeared. But the most important moment was still coming. The following day, King Rowan ordered a royal ceremony. Every citizen was invited. The square filled beyond capacity. People climbed rooftops. Others stood on wagons. No one wanted to miss it. At the center stood Elara. Nervous, confused, overwhelmed. She had spent her entire life avoiding crowds. Now the entire kingdom stared at her. King Rowan rose first. His voice echoed through the square. 15 years ago, this kingdom failed. Silence followed. We condemned an innocent man. Many lowered their heads. We allowed lies to become truth. More heads lowered. And we allowed his daughter to suffer for a crime she never committed. Tears appeared throughout the crowd. The king stepped aside. Then Prince Adrian moved forward. The square became silent once more. His eyes found Elara's. Neither spoke immediately. There was too much emotion, too much history, too much pain. Finally, Adrian broke the silence. Elara. Her throat tightened. For the first time in her life, her name was being spoken before the entire kingdom. Not thief's daughter. Not criminal's child. Just Elara. The prince continued. You were judged for a crime you never committed. Tears streamed down her face. You were punished for lies you never told. The crowd listened quietly. You showed kindness to people who offered you cruelty. Many citizens began crying. Because they remembered. The insults. The whispers. The rejection. They remembered participating. And shame settled heavily upon them. Then came the moment nobody would ever forget. Prince Adrian stepped closer. Then slowly, he dropped to one knee. Gasps swept through the kingdom. Thousands watched in disbelief. The future king bowed his head before the woman they once mocked. Before the woman they once hated. Before the woman they once called the thief's daughter. Adrian's voice remained steady. I kneel before the daughter of an innocent man. The crowd fell completely silent. I kneel before a woman whose strength exceeded our compassion. Tears flowed freely now. Even soldiers wiped their eyes. I kneel because this kingdom owes you an apology. Elara broke down completely. Years of pain. Years of loneliness. Years of humiliation. Years of grief. All of it crashed into her at once. The prince looked up, his eyes shining. Forgive us. The words echoed across the square. And for the first time since her childhood, Elara felt something she thought she had lost forever. Peace. Not revenge. Not victory. Peace. The crowd slowly followed the prince's example. One by one. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Then thousands. People lowered their heads. People who had mocked her. People who had judged her. People who had believed the lie. An entire kingdom apologized. No one ordered them to. No one forced them to. They simply understood. Truth had finally won. King Rowan then announced Thomas Vale's complete restoration. His name was cleared. His honors returned. A monument would be built in his memory. The crowd erupted in applause. This time not for a prince. Not for a king. For a man who had been innocent all along. Months later, life looked very different. People greeted Elara with respect. Children smiled when she passed. Merchants welcomed her. The whispers disappeared. Yet the most remarkable thing wasn't how the kingdom changed. It was how Elara remained the same. Kind, humble, compassionate. She never sought revenge. Never demanded repayment. Never used her newfound status against others. She simply continued helping people. Just as she always had. Because character is revealed not when life is easy, but when life is unfair. And hers had been tested more than most. Years later, people would still tell the story. Not about the theft. Not about the trial. Not even about the prince. They spoke about a young woman who refused to become bitter. A young woman who remained good when the world gave her every reason not to. And whenever children asked what happened to the girl everyone called the thief's daughter, their parents would smile and answer, "She became the woman before whom a prince knelt." If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Story Realm TV, and tell us in the comments. If you were Elara, would you have forgiven the kingdom after everything they put you through? Remember, people may destroy your reputation. They may spread lies. They may judge you unfairly. But the truth has a way of surviving. And when it finally rises, even those who once looked down on you may be forced to bow before it.